And she was so straight-faced, and she said, I get them from here. And she was trying to insinuate in Kiswahili that she used to give sexual favors to one of the teachers.
Wow. Every single woman goes through this.
My period should be equal to somebody else's period. When does that then decompose?
500 years?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Welcome to The Search for Wellness, a podcast dedicated to discovering the path to a healthier, more fulfilling life. Join us on this heartfelt journey as we share inspiring stories, insightful conversations, and practical tips to nurture your mind, body, and spirit.
Madhvi Dalal used to live in Wales, left her chain of pharmaceutical stores to seek deeper meaning in Kenya. As a yoga and Reiki teacher, she encountered period poverty in informal settlements, prompting her to found PADMAD. The organization has distributed over 60,000 reusable sanitary kits and educated communities on menstrual hygiene. PADMAD's eco-friendly pads align with global environmental goals, reducing waste and lasting up to 5 years per user. Recognized with the Bayer Foundation Women Empowerment Award and featured in the documentary Powerful Women by Belen Soto, Madhvi's journey is a source of inspiration and empowerment. Thank you, Madhvi, for being here today.
Thank you
and
for
welcome
having me.
to The Search of Wellness.
Thank you.
What inspired you to pursue your current path and work in this field?
So mine is a bit of a long story. When I moved from the UK, I came here, and just as I was still trying to get through my pharmacy exams, which are pretty tough, I was teaching yoga and some dance in the slums. And then, almost 2 years on, I came face to face with what's called period poverty, and I didn't, and that was only because by the time the girls had a rapport with me, and then they said, oh, by the way, we're missing school not because we're not well, it's because of our period. I said, what does that mean? Because where I came from, your husband would buy pads at Tesco, and that you don't really think much. So because I had some time, and I thought I'd travel and just understand really what is the problem, because we go on online and there's so much statistics which is pretty heavy to digest. So I traveled a little bit to find out if it's an urban slum problem, or is it a Kenyan problem, or how big is the problem, why is it a problem, and just to understand it. And so I traveled a little bit. I interviewed girls and women who would use other people's used pads just so they can trade in tomatoes for a few hours, or they would use weird and wonderful things, make tampons out of cow dung, wrap it in tissue. So that's really what I was documenting, but still carrying on. And then one time we were in a slum in Nairobi, in an orphanage actually. And so we were going through the same questions, where'd you get pads from? So one of the girls said, here. And I said, I know you don't, because that's why we're here. We want to check, how do you actually manage your menstrual cycle? And she was so straight-faced, and she said, I get them from here. And she was trying to insinuate in Kiswahili that she used to give sexual favors to one of the teachers.
Wow.
And so, because it needed to be authentic and genuine and all the rest of it, I said, okay, this is a very small place. Let's walk through this. Take me. And so as she was, I just remember how I was feeling. And then she's still straight-faced. And when I said, well, where is all this happening, and how often? And she said, depending on the quality of sex, she gets 1 or 2 packs of pads.
Wow.
And so that fell like a lead balloon in my heart, and I with my attitude of from an outsider, it's like, oh, we work with child protection, let me move you from here. And she said, no, Niko sawa, because basically she had food, water, and shelter, and that's the price she was paying for education. And that's when I really began to digest, okay, so this is a problem, but to get to education, it's a privilege. And so how do we maintain that? How do we maintain ourselves going through secondary school? And so that's when I thought, okay, you know what, I need to stop documenting and just walking around and actually do something. The only thing I knew at that time was I knew what I did not want to do. I didn't want to distribute disposable pads for so many reasons. One is logistics, it just wouldn't make sense. I wouldn't have the consistency of, accounts, and also the environmental issue. But I didn't know how I could help. Anyway, one thing led to another. I was in the yoga festival in in Lamu, and some of our Singaporean friends were talking about reusable pads. I said, whoa, 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 what is that? And then this is where I am now.
But it's amazing how the universe, you desired something.
Yeah.
And then you went to the festival and you met somebody who was talking about reusable pads. And when was it that you started the foundation?
Yeah, about 6 years ago. I mean, but when it started, it's not what it looks like now. I tried and tested so many different things. I thought I could change the whole world by teaching boys and girls in schools how to make one pad. And, I thought, that's it. They'll be fine for the rest of their lives. It didn't work out, obviously. Then I started saying, okay, women in the community, maybe they could make the pads and then run their own businesses. But that did not work out very well either because, the whole point, I was looking at it from a medical point of view, that you don't want the girls to come up with secondary infections. You're missing school because of your cycle.
Yes.
And then if you use weird and wonderful things like mattresses, you may have a secondary infection, like a UTI. So we don't want to miss even more school. And so when women in the rural areas were making some pads, maybe the machines are dirty or the hygiene levels are not up to standard, and that product is not a great product, then if the girl gets an infection again, I'm just shooting myself in the foot. So that's why, we had to learn along the way. Yeah.
And what are the materials that the pads are made out of?
So we use natural materials. The reason why we use natural materials is it's more durable, it's long lasting, breathable, which is so essential in this country, and also it's sourced from Kenya. So we use only natural materials. And so basically the product is 100% biodegradable.
And who makes these sanitary pads?
So we have a few schemes. So one is education, one is an empowerment. We have a few small manufacturing units where we employ, say, teen mums or ex-prisoners, just to identify women or even some men in the community who would not otherwise be able to sustain a formal job in Kenya. For example, if you've been in prison, whatever the reason you were in prison for, even if you didn't have license for selling tomatoes on the street, whenever you come out, you will never be able to get a certificate of good standing.
Oh, yeah.
And so if you don't, it's very hard to get a formal job.
Yeah.
And sustain one. So what happens is the rate of recidivism in Kenya is so high just because people cannot sustain formal jobs. So what we try and do is identify these people and say, okay, well, you can come into our project until you're financially stable, in which case you can either stay or you can carry on. You may have some skill, for example, tailoring. You can carry on and make your own little duka, selling dresses or something.
That's so amazing. I didn't know that. I had no idea that you have, it's like a full 360 that you are doing pretty much.
Yeah.
And then do you go and educate these girls on how to use them and the hygiene standards and the cleanliness and all of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a few trainings. Again, one training is for the people we employ.
Yeah.
And then part of it is also empowerment and, what does finances look like? What's the in, what's the out, things like that. The other training is when we are for the beneficiaries. So that's not just schoolgirls. It could be also women in the community.
Yeah.
But we would say, for example, I don't know, we have a school with 500 kids, adolescent kids. We would gather them, boys and girls, and they have to go through an educational workshop of about 1.5 to 2 hours. And that includes everything. And that's also for the boys. It's mandatory. The boys and some
Why
of the
the
teachers
boys?
come. So what we realized, I mean, we have to be culturally sensitive also sometimes, but most of the time we insist that the boys and some of the teachers come is because there's so much stigma around menstruation, but there's also misinformation. And if we are going to bring up a society which is, peer-to-peer helping, and when we're talking about menstrual health, who is going to help you? If you're not even able to speak to your friend or your sister or your teacher, how then, when are you married and you have some kind of menstrual issue, how are you supposed to deal with that? So the idea is to bring the boys on board, to make them understand this is what health looks like, this is what it actually is, to demystify that and also cultural taboos, but also to be there for support, you know, not now maybe, but to avoid teasing. I don't know if you remember, I think maybe 2 or 3 years now, there was a case in one of the schools in Kenya.
Okay.
I mean, it just happens to be one case which got highlighted and got caught by the media, but there was a girl who had stained her clothes in class. And so she got shamed by the teacher, and she had to be sent home because she stained her clothes. And so when she went home, when the mum came back from work, she was found hanging.
Oh my God.
She hung herself. You know, that is the kind of shame people have to live with. And that's just one which came to light.
Yeah.
So the idea is to bring the boys and teachers on board, saying, this is how natural it is. This is how not dirty it is. And to be able to, the idea is when we leave, to create a platform which is safe, where they can actually say, oh, you know, the girls could say, oh, actually, you know, I haven't had my period for a couple of months. Do you think I should go to the clinic or not? They can help each other. That's the idea, yeah.
Oh, wow. Wow, I'm so taken back by that.
But actually, you know, Pooja, for what we found, in most cases, the boys are more curious than the girls. The girls
Really?
have a sense of shyness, but suddenly there's some light shed on something which is so dark. So the boys really don't know. You know, they think it's, for example, a menstrual cycle is, you know, you switch on a tap and you're bleeding the whole time. You can't blame them because they just don't know.
Yeah, they've not been given that correct education and that guidance, right?
Yeah.
Wow, that is so amazing. I mean, I'm blown away by what you are doing, which is why I really wanted you here today to talk about this, because I've looked at your website, I've read a bit about your website, on your website. I've even looked at some of the interviews that you have done. And I just think it's so important to bring this to the forefront. This is something that we need to be aware of. I have 2 boys. They're twin boys. They're 11. They're soon going to have girls in their class. They probably already have girls in their class who have their periods. They're in a very good school, so I'm pretty sure they're already well educated and well versed with the period and all of that. But to have nobody to give you this, and then to have somebody like you to shed light on it and to give this to you, honestly, I'm so grateful that you are doing such an amazing job. And this is why I really wanted to have you share all this information. And the more we can share stuff like this, the more people can help and the more people can understand, because all of this can just go past our heads completely unaware. I mean, I'll give you an example. I'm even completely unaware of a period anymore, completely. Until maybe my daughter, who's 5, starts getting her period, is when I'm going to register, because I had my uterus removed after my surgery. And after that, I haven't had a period. And so I've gone completely unaware of having a period now. And it obviously is not the most beautiful thing, but it's just something that every woman needs to accept and shed light on and be aware of and not be ashamed of having. And it's okay for us to say this and talk about it here, but then the people, you know, in rural parts of Kenya who have not been given the validation that they should be given, this is that every single woman goes through this. Yeah, every single little girl goes through this. And what you are doing is absolutely amazing. I'm just blown away by what you're doing.
Thank you, but I'll tell you a little story. So when you talk about ignorance, I mean, this is not just a Kenyan thing. Ignorance, I wouldn't call it ignorance. It's just the way things have happened, you know. Even myself, whatever my background is, you know, there's so many myths, like you can't go to the temple if you have your period because you are dirty, quote unquote. There was a time when I was in really, really rural Samburu in the deepest steppes. And one of the women, we were talking, you know, we obviously have a different conversation with the women. So she said she was pregnant for 2.5 years. And I said, no, you know, this is what a cycle looks like. And if you haven't had your period for 2.5 years, this is the reasons. Having said that, you know, the matter of when you're saying that it's something we need to accept. Well, actually, what we also try and promote or try and speak about is the beauty of the menstrual health. You know, the reason why, if you actually observe your flow or your period, whatever the discharged, it actually has information about your emotional health for that month. And many people don't know that. And there's also when a plant is, for example, a plant is dying or, you know, almost dead, if you actually put period blood on it, it will begin to survive because of the nutrients of this. So there's so much, a different dimension completely of the period blood and the menstrual cycle. And, you know, before we had all this external, you know, technology and electricity, it was linked to the lunar cycle.
Yes.
And so there's, again, another big dimension about how beautiful the cycle really can be. And I just think it's, well, our duty not to kind of preach about it, but to allow girls to see, oh yeah, okay, you know, even for example, cramps, how come some girls get it, how come some don't? You know, that's got to do with something, for example. Yeah.
And I think that enough people need to know that why a woman gets her period and the education behind it. But the most important person that needs to know is a woman herself.
Yeah.
Why she gets her period and what is the reason behind it. And what you talked about, the lunar phase. And we go through that because a period is exactly the same cycle as the moon. It is between 28 to 29 days, the cycle of the moon. So if you follow the moon, you can follow your period around. So even though I don't have my uterus anymore, I actually know when I'm going to get my periods because I still have my ovaries. So I will know around the moon, around the full moon. I'm like, okay, and I still feel like energetically I still have it because I still get cramps on the day that I supposedly am supposed to start my periods. And also stepping back into what you said about the whole 5 days of not going to the temple. So I actually think that there is a theory behind that. And the theory is that back in the days, we didn't have hygiene. We didn't have sanitary towels. We didn't have any of this stuff. So we had some clothes that we were allowed to soil while we had our periods. So we would wear that and we would be put in a secluded place because we were almost like embarrassing because we were bleeding through our clothes and we didn't have anywhere to stop that happening. And so those are the 5 days. So I think it was more to do with that than to do with the actual religious aspect of it. And I totally disagree that anyone should stay away from going to the temple if they have their periods. I think you should be allowed to do anything you like, but yes, that's when your body is asking you to rest when you have your periods. I wanted to step into a little bit more about what we, even everything else that you are doing is absolutely amazing, but there's one thing that also goes unnoticed, and that is the environment. Is that when you are giving people these reusable sanitary pads, the impact that is also having on the environment because of the accumulation of all these sanitary towels, because most of them are made out of plastic. Well, all of them are probably made out of plastic, and only now you get a few organic ones. And you get people using the, I don't know what they're called, menstrual cups? Yes. So maybe you can talk a little bit about the...
Wait, first I'll tell you the organic ones, the ones which are a single-use organic.
Yeah, they're not.
Yeah. I would just hate to burst your bubble, but that organic material may just be the top layer.
Ah.
So please bear that in mind. Anyway, so a normal, regular disposable pad, say made by Procter & Gamble, Johnson & Johnson, do you know what's in them? Do you know what they're made of?
No. That's why I wanted you here.
So this is the question I ask.
I know there's plastic, and I know there's some sort of chemicals and all of that, for sure, definitely, but I've not done my detailed search into it.
No, so when I go into a workshop, I ask the girls and the boys, what do you think is in a disposable pad? And I will guarantee about 95% will say cotton.
There's no cotton in there.
No, there's no cotton in there. Mostly it's 90% plastic. And it's a different kind of plastic. It's not the good kind, but it's a different...
Phthalates, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And then why is it white? Because however you would bleach your clothes, they use kind of bleach called dioxin. And the reason why this is just consumerism, you know, because with the eye, it just looks cleaner because it's white, because that's what our brain is telling us. So that's why, to make it white, they're using a bleach. And that's the part which goes so close to our intimate parts.
Exactly.
And so there's been tons of research about the effects of these toxins. And, during your period, actually, your uterus sinks slightly. So it's even closer to this pad and even more accessible to the toxins. Same with tampons. And we actually did a pilot in Aberdeen, in one of the high schools in Aberdeen. And so there we found that a lot more girls were getting cramps than they would for an equal number of girls here. And I really didn't understand why. And then, anyway, when they started using the reusable pads, we got a lot of feedback that the girls who used to actually go to the clinic because of their cramps stopped going. And there's a very direct relationship between using tampons, which is actually even closer, and, with the toxins. So whether that's true or not, I personally totally believe it has a direct relationship. But the idea is, if you're using plastic in an intimate place, the sweat, okay, you're just attracting more, infections. And most importantly, when you throw that pad away, where do you throw it? Yes, you have a fantastic incinerator, or if you're in a hotel or something, you put it in that bin.
Yeah.
What happens to that pad? But what happens to the pad, which a girl in slums here in Nairobi or rural Kenya, where do their pads go, for example? For example, if you were to donate, 100 pads to 100 packets to 100 girls in Kibera,
Yeah.
once they use them, where would that pad go?
Just in the landfills.
So it's actually called flying pads in Kibera. So it's just, they're just thrown over the shoulder and it lands on somebody's doorstep.
Wow.
Or the dog takes it away or something. In rural Kenya, it goes down the pit latrine usually, or in Samburu down the anthills, So it has to go somewhere. But then my question to you is, if it goes somewhere, wherever it goes, down the pit latrine or under the ground, when does that then decompose?
500 years?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Technically, 500 to 800 years. So by the time, you're in a school and there's like this big mound, they have to always unclog their toilets. Environmentally, there's just so much plastic, as you can see in Dandora, et cetera, but that's not the only, it's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Americans, they do it in billions of tons per year.
Yeah.
And it has to go somewhere. And that is only one generation old, actually. This mega use of disposable pads is one generation old. The generation before were actually using reusable diapers and reusable pads.
Yeah.
They were, folding cloth and using it as pads.
Yeah, exactly. My mom used to tell me that.
And,
and then they used to wash them, dry them, and then use them again.
And so now we're hiding behind the face that, oh my goodness, it's just so much cleaner to have a disposable pad. Who said?
Who said, right?
Just because it's white. There was one time when I was speaking to the government here, we were helping with the standards for pads, for reusable pads. And so one of the big guys, he goes, oh yeah, but they're not sterile. Reusable pads are not sterile. First of all, the pads that you take out of a packet are not sterile anyway. But what my answer to him was, with all due respect, your underwear is not sterile.
No.
Sir, right? Nobody's underwear is sterile.
Yeah, your intimate part's not sterile. It's not supposed to be sterile, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're not supposed to be sterile. So we can't hide behind the fact that it's cleaner. It just is not.
It's not, right?
No.
It's doing so much harm to our body and to the environment. And I love how you put it into steps and into perspective, that we don't even realize the bioaccumulation of all this plastic, let alone your sanitary pad, all the other plastic that is going into the environment. And phthalates are this very soft kind of plastic, and now I see it. I see this. I can actually visualize that sanitary pad, and then some of them have this gel in them that's like supposed to be super absorbent, to absorb your period and to keep you feeling dry and nice and not all wet and dirty. But what would you say? Let's say if reusable pads, fine, but what else would you suggest somebody can use that would be like, this would be okay?
Anything. Cups, there's sponges, there's period panties, there's all
There's
sorts.
period panties,
Yeah,
right?
and they are so cool for teenagers, because you just, and between reusable pads and period panties, you can even shove it in the washing machine. So, if you're one of those kids who just doesn't want to touch and see blood and you're all grossed out, you can do the same. But the point being, if you, for example, our bigger campaigns is around the coast, near Lamu and all that,
Okay.
they have a big problem with diapers and pads, which are eventually going to the water systems. And these microplastics are harming the fish. Basically, the fish ingest this and they start to feel full. When they start to feel full, they're actually getting malnourished slowly and slowly and slowly. And we're doing huge problems. I mean, not only the microplastics, but also the toxins. And if we don't see it, I mean, by the time there's one more generation, it's going to be disastrous. And I really think the younger generation in the West are actually taking responsibility and they're using eco-friendly options. But here there's such a kind of a bottleneck of resistance, especially with the middle-aged women saying that they think it's a poor man's product. They think we're going a step back. But there's so many choices out there that women can use. I mean, cups, if you're privileged enough to have clean running water wherever you are in your travels, then that's a good one.
Yeah. Wow. This is so amazing. I'm really blown away by all this information. This podcast was created to inspire and connect with people. If you are liking the content of this podcast, hit the subscribe button, like, follow, and share this platform. Lots of love. So was there a specific moment that made you realize the impact of this plastic pollution and the sanitary pads on the environment and just on the awareness of the toxins? Was there a specific moment that this was an aha moment for you?
I wouldn't say a specific moment, but it just requires somebody to do the legwork. If you actually go to places where, I don't know, where this is a situation where you are a girl in a school, either urban, slum, or rural, and you follow that pattern. Okay, so do they have time? Do they have access to disposable pads? And if they do, what is happening to them? And then there was a time in Kibera which I actually saw this flying pad business, and the dog took it. Then there was another time which really is stuck in my mind forever, and I've got a really nice photo to show. There is a school in urban somewhere in some slum in Nairobi, and I'm just taking a photo with the girls, and behind there's a mound. So that is supposed to be their playground. And that mound has some crosses, and that mound is full of plastic.
Oh no.
And I'm like, okay, so what is this? Right now it's their playground. Before, long time ago, it used to be a graveyard, but now it's just plastic, full of diapers, pads, and plastic bags. And that's their playground.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And what do you say to that? What happens to health and safety? What happens to hygiene? What happens to infections? What happens to anything? Dignity, that is a graveyard.
Yeah.
That is somebody's sanctuary, for example.
Exactly. And now it's become a garbage yard.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Of
dump
plastic.
Yard of plastic.
Yeah, yeah.
And you were talking about the ingredients of the sanitary pads. Do we have any sanitary companies that actually write the ingredients of what's in their?
You mean the 100% organic ones? No. So you see, a disposable sanitary pad pack. Have you ever seen what's the contents in there?
No,
Nobody even bothers to look because it's just not there.
Yeah.
It's just nice, attractive, something fancy on there. But if you have to by law have even shampoo bottles or conditioner bottles with all their ingredients, which is maybe 1,000, or food, which is 100 ingredients in there, how come then something which is so intimate, so necessary, why does that company not have the obligation to write the contents?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just in itself a big fat question mark, which as soon as say your daughter or my daughter would find out, oh, this is made of 90% plastic, this is not the choice I'm going to make, that's why. Mm-hmm. That's why they're not writing it, because that is an obvious no to the younger generation.
Yeah. And I feel like the younger generation are going into that place, hopefully, where they're going to turn off the package of anything in the supermarket and they're going to read the label. I always read the label. And I always encourage people, read the label of anything that you buy, because even in your shampoo, the word fragrances is written there, right? And then there's like 50 to 60 different hidden toxins just in that word.
Exactly.
The word phthalates can also mean different types of phthalates. Your BPAs are not really your BPAs. They could be your BPFs. They're still plastic chemicals that are still being put into these products. And especially something that is so close to you and so intimate, that is inside your body. Like, you actually put a tampon that goes inside your body. You can only imagine what kind of havoc that causes. In your opinion, what is one crucial aspect of this issue that has not received enough attention yet and needs more light shed on it?
Well, I think the crucial aspect, I'm not sure if it needs more light or not, but the crucial aspect, which is kind of like the blocks on the road, are, in my opinion, it's not men, it's not their mindset. It actually is the older generation women. And why is maybe because they're misinformed, maybe because they do think it's a step back, because they think progress is whatever's new.
Yeah.
And so my main challenge is to convince public this is an option which needs to be considered, or for example, if you're working with policymakers or the government, the shelf on the supermarket should have all sorts of products for any user to be able to choose. Then how come then we didn't even have standards for reusable products until just a couple of years ago? Even that we had to fight.
Okay.
Why? Why is it not important? Why, when we've been bleeding forever since zero?
Yeah.
So how come these things have just not progressed? And so I think those are the main questions that we really need to ask ourselves. Are we doing justice to what is so natural, a human right almost? Why are we then still having these conversations that, our motto, for example, is bleed with pride, period.
Yeah.
Why isn't dignity just a done thing? Why is it just not there for everyone? My period should be equal to somebody else's period, whether they're in the slum or, wherever they are.
Exactly.
Why not?
And you speak with such passion. I see such passion in your eyes and in your voice when you speak about this. And honestly, what you do, and I've told you this before in the past, I don't think there's anyone else who can do something like this. I know I can't. I can definitely not do what you do, which is absolutely amazing. What drives you to do what you do?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I have a lot of support. So that I have to always remember. I do have a lot of support. If ever I'm stuck, somehow by magic, there's, people there already helping me. And so that I know is a given, that whenever I feel a little bit overwhelmed, there's going to be some kind of magic.
The universe always provides.
Always. But how do I actually love what I do. I think when I first moved to this country, and I was a bit frazzled because everything was a bit different. When there's traffic, I come from Wales where there's just sheep and it took exactly the same amount to get to work. But also the inequality in economy, How come my kids were able to go to such a fancy school, yet there's some kids who can't even go to school with like 3,000 shillings, per term or whatever. So I was getting a little bit, I guess, overwhelmed. And then I was speaking to a friend, and she said, Madhvi, instead of complaining, just do something about it. So now that I have found that, yes, I can do something about it, if sometimes it's just too big a problem. Really, and then you think, what difference am I going to make, or what am I going to do? But actually, and then so many people tell me, oh, you're doing such a great job, you're doing such a great job. But actually, I'm feeding myself by going there. I love to go to these places and just speak to people, women, girls, boys, teachers, and they feed me. Because when I go back at the end of the day, I'm full with gratitude, because there's so much I have, which is just in a blink, I just forget about it, just you can go on and on and on. I have hot shower. I mean, that is a big fat bonus for so many people.
And we take it for granted.
And so when I
every
go
single
back,
day.
I realize how much I have. So really, I feed off from most people. It's not really the other way. It could be the other way, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why I like to do what I do.
And you know, there is so much power in giving than in receiving. Because when you give with a full heart and open heart is when you receive, and the universe will always keep providing more for you. You just feel like your cup is full when you give. Like I've said this before in the past also on my podcast, is when you help others heal, you heal yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the way the universe actually works. Yeah.
Yeah, no, totally. It absolutely works like that way. What can we do to support you today? What can each and every individual do to support this organization and what you are doing and this fine work that you're doing?
Thank you for that. I think if we step aside from the organization as an entity, what I would love to see and witness is to have conversations at home. You know, dads speaking to their girls, moms having the liberty to, you know, talk to their girls, say, this is what it's going to look like. You know, your first period, let it be a celebration. You know, challenging religious leaders, for example. I would love those kind of things to happen. And then also for the younger generation to really open their eyes. I'm not just talking about pads and menstrual wear. I'm just talking about anything that is affecting us from moving forward. And you know, there's a lot of words out there. So period poverty is one big fat coined thing. Period poverty is a lack of access and affordability of pads. But if we have the power to change it into something like period dignity and not really think about it as poor, like I said, you know, my period is really the same as somebody else's period. So let's treat it that way. Let's find that connection, woman to woman, girl to girl. And I think that's what's really going to make a change in this generation. If we can eradicate it, frankly, I just think, what's the big deal?
Yeah.
You know, change your mindset, make things accessible, make them sustainable, and you're good to go.
Yeah.
If I say my pad kits last at least 5 years, my own pad kit has lasted more than 5 years.
Really?
So really, it should last forever. The only reason my daughter changes hers is because she's bored of the pattern, you know? So it really should last forever. And if I'm sorted out, then how can we all not just, it's just so simple.
I'm going to get my pads from you for my daughter when she starts her period. I'm definitely going to celebrate her first period, and I'm going to make sure that is that. I like that. I really like that. It should be a celebration.
Yeah.
That's absolutely amazing. Is there something that we have not spoken about today that you think is really important that I have missed?
No, I don't think anything really. I think it's good to get informed. So most women who bleed, do you understand your period? For example, do you know what an average flow volume? Say somebody bleeds up to 4 or 5 days. Do you know how much they would bleed in those 4 to 5 days? Can take a guess?
Well, I know how much I would have probably bled I think the first 2 days were quite heavy. And then the next 3 days were quite light. So I would not even have to change my sanitary pad for the whole day, even for the next 3 days. Or sometimes day 3 would be light and day 4 would be heavy again, and then day 5 would be light. But 1 and 2 would always be really heavy, but I have no idea what it would be like.
Can you guess? Would it be like a little bit more than this or a little bit less than this?
No, more than that. Okay. Probably the whole glass.
Okay, so say 250 mils, right?
Okay, yeah.
Actually, on average, a woman would bleed 30 to 40 milliliters only.
Oh, okay.
That's just 3 or 4 tablespoonfuls.
Oh.
But you see what we think and what really is how I'd love for women to really know, and also to see your emotional health at the end of the month or during your menstrual cycle. It's quite special, to be honest.
Yeah. No, you're right. I loved my I would get cranky. I would be very cranky. I still get cranky around that time, but then I know that, but I don't get the period.
And that's okay, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And be aware of it. And that is so true. I really, really like that. And when it comes to what you do, you will share all the details with me so that I can actually put it in the podcast, in the links below, so that if there is a way people can support you, I would really like for you to share that right now. If, how can we support your project and what you do?
Yeah, so obviously you can donate.
Yeah.
Or if you know of a community or school which needs this kind of, reasonable pads in education, then please let us know. Or if you, know of any corporates or NGOs who are supporting this, please bring them to light so that we can approach them and say, this is what we're doing and how can we collaborate. So anything really. Or if you're just maybe a teenager on Instagram all day long, maybe you could have conversations with your friends, about this to demystify, menstrual taboos and things like that. Or I don't know, some people have made songs about it, and just anything to bring awareness.
Bring more and more awareness to this.
And it's a huge problem, statistically, 65% of the girls and women in Kenya alone cannot afford pads. Wow. What does that actually look like? Say you're a girl who has the privilege of going to school, primary school. By the time you get to secondary school, you may have to miss a quarter of your curriculum because during those 4 days, you can't go to school. So you're missing a quarter of the curriculum, which means the boys already are having a bit of a head gain there.
Yeah.
By the time and some people actually miss exams like KCPE because of the period, they just can't go.
Yeah.
Which is shameful. And then when you actually do pass or you go through secondary school, what are the chances that you would be able to get to tertiary school compared to the boy child? And then by the time you try and get a job, you are so off the balance compared to the boy. So you're probably not going to be able to be economically as stable as the boy child or financially stable. So what happens? You go back into poverty. So your children are born in that.
Wow.
But if you just have the same girl who's gone through primary school, goes to secondary school, and can go into school and has menstrual products and doesn't miss school, she has an equal chance of going through the tertiary education. She has an equal chance of getting that job, and she'll actually empower herself, her family, and her community. So it's just so simple.
It is so simple.
Yes, so simple. It's so simple.
There's one thing that I wanted to ask you. When you go to all these places, how supportive are, like, let's say, the teachers and all of these people when it comes to what you are doing?
If the head teacher is male, super supportive.
Really?
Very, very supportive. The only resistance we may get, the communities are very supportive. Kids love it. And we have
I've
surveys
seen some
to fill.
of those videos of yours. Yeah.
It's fun. It's a great connection time. We've got it in the surveys. The only resistance we may have is like from a matron who's old or something, saying, no, we can't have this. Or our main thing is, we can't have the boys and girls sit together. But it's our job to make them comfortable.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that matron had her period also, and probably still has it, and she's still doing this and living by the norms that she was taught and the way that she was treated. It's almost like history repeating itself. She was probably treated the same way, so she thinks, why should she be treated differently?
Yeah. And most people think it's dirty because their aunt or their mum told them, who told them their aunt or their mum said it's dirty, dirty, dirty. So that's a dialogue.
Exactly. It's like a dirty ew. It's gross.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm so glad that we've had this opportunity to have this conversation. And what is the name of your website again? If you could just repeat it. I will write it in the captions, but I would like you to just say it.
It's www.padmadkenya.com.
Thank you so much for sharing all this insightful information, and I'm hoping that from this we can create more and more awareness around our periods and around the period poverty in Kenya and the plastic pollution that we are also bioaccumulating in the environment and the toxins that we are also putting into our body, which is absolutely amazing. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for
I feel
having
very
me.
grateful to have had you on this podcast and on this episode.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.